Jennifer must have come and nabbed it off my desk.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item of business tonight is public comment at a public hearing regarding zoning, which would be proposed amendments to 140-67 .1, 140-9 definitions, and 140 table A land use. Those are where all the amendments are going to occur. We've been working on this for a while, and so is the planning board. We have a recommendation from the planning board to move ahead. They had their public hearing, and give a copy of the memo. Somewhere, but then we have the handy
The memo
copy of
from the planning
the,
board.
well, it would have been from Bill Straub. Summarizing the activities of the, I think it was their meeting on the 1st. Yeah, the 1st.
Do you want it to just be read into record or?
I'd like to just address exactly what the recommendation was, without paraphrasing if possible.
I have it.
So if you go to the end, there's a
Recommendations.
I believe it's dated September 2nd.
Yeah, it's dated September 2nd. So the final amendments that the planning board suggested were first, table A land use. Table A has been modified so that caregiver retail stores are only allowed in the B1 zoning district following major site plan approval, with an N included in the I1 and I2 zoning districts, whereas previously I think we had a yes in the I1, right? The second one is performance standards for caregiver retail stores, section B, and this is just removing a section of language stating if the use is to be located within the I1 zoning district, the setback shall be a minimum of 500 feet. That was removed because of the previous change to change I1 from a yes to a no, or from an MSC to a no. And then the last one was the addition of section N addressing licensing. And the planning board approved of all those changes.
I think that was a vote of 3 and 1 abstention.
For the planning board?
Yeah.
I got a hard copy here.
By a vote of 3 in favor, 1 abstention. And Manley was absent.
Barbara, do you need a copy of this?
No.
For the public hearing?
Nope.
Okay. So it's this Southburg Town Council from the Southburg Planning Board dated September 2nd, 2001. In reference to medical marijuana caregiver retail stores, proposed ordinance amendments. At the Town Council's workshop last week, that would have been on the 7th. we discussed this matter, and the topic of maintaining video records came up in the under 140.67.1, paragraph E, subparagraph 4, calls for sufficient appropriate security measures, and subparagraph that A, and then 1 calls for security surveillance cameras installed, etc. But while there was a requirement to have security cameras, we didn't have an idea at that point in time about appropriate length of time to store the videotape, or probably not, that's probably an old-fashioned term now, but the video recording. So pursuant to that, yesterday I sent a note over to the police department, just getting some advice on that, and the chief wrote back, we see equipment reasonably priced that retains data for up to 90 days prior to overwrite. I recommend a minimum 30-day retention. This allows us time to review criminal allegations should one ever occur. Thank you, Chief Daniel Joy. So that would be the recommendation from, and I guess what we discussed at the workshop, whether our price would be a problem, and apparently according to the chief, it's not. So that piece that's recommended for inclusion in the text of the ordinance at the appropriate spot. Other than that, we'll conduct a public hearing. I think that's the background. We'll have public comment. Mallory, if you could keep time again, please.
Sure.
And we'll take comments at 3-minute intervals. Please stick to the 3 minutes, and then we'll hear comments for or against, whatever, and then take that into consideration for our deliberations later on in the meeting when we convene the regular council meeting. So, does anybody, Steve, you sent us an email.
I'd like to speak to that if I
Do
could.
you wish to speak to that?
Before we, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we had spoken at our workshop last week that we wanted to in particular survey folks if they had information about the licensing fees. So that was something that we wanted to get some comments on and feedback.
And I did dig up, because we had kind of a lot of email exchanges over the last year or so. And Carrie had pulled together actually a spreadsheet of fees specifically for stores that I have too, that I think we can.
So
Do I stand somewhere different now?
I think.
No, you should be fine
I
there.
think you can
Yeah.
just stand up and just
Steve Bays,
Yeah.
160 Ogunquit Road. I had sent the counselors and town manager an email, and I'll just summarize some of the points I made in that. I'm supportive of the expanded performance standards and the town licensing edition as initially recommended by the Medical Cannabis Storefront Committee, that when they did their presentation in June of 2019, they as well had recommended licensing. That didn't happen at that point, so I'm glad that it's come full circle. I think that'll help protect the citizens. And as this industry develops, maybe there'll be a time where it's not necessary, but I think initially it is, and it's what we see everyone else doing. I appreciate the planning board's work on this review and their overlay district approach for how they present it. I've attended most of these meetings. I missed the fact that I guess it was removed from the I-1 district or I-1 zone. So not clear on why that was, but thank you for correcting that. What I also had presented to the councilors and the town manager was an email from a field investigator out of the Office of Marijuana Policy, Kurt Bose, who had done an investigation of 161 Ogunquit Road, which has been a popular topic, very near and dear to many of us. But again, him confirming that that is a medical marijuana retail store. So we've had this back and forth about whether it is or it isn't. It is. And again, he confirms it. And what I'd like to know is, as we move forward with these amended ordinances, will it be applied to all the retail stores, including 161 Ogunquit Road, or will it only be applied to the ones downtown that have gone through the planning board process? And I would be supportive of these amendments if it in fact is done fairly to everyone. I would not be supportive because I think it's not fair to the current medical marijuana store business owners to be, required to comply with performance standards, licensing fees, renewal fees, and do what they have, while this other individual doesn't have to comply. And I think that pretty much summarizes it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, if I could ask you a question, there was a part redacted or
Yeah.
blacked out. Can you share?
I blocked those out because they were comments, and I did reply to Jennifer. I forget my exact words, but they were comments that the investigator made, a one-sentence comment about an impression he had from talking to the CEO about that establishment that I didn't think was appropriate to put out there for public record.
Okay.
So it doesn't relate to whether it's a store or not. It's a comment related to the establishment that I didn't think was appropriate to share.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, I see Greg Zinser's hand is up.
Thank you. Just Greg Zinser, Back Acres Lane here in South Berwick, speaking in favor of the proposed ordinance. I want to thank the planning board and the town council for the work they've done on this, and echo what Steve said, happy that the licensing is in here. I think that's going to go a long way in the future as we deal with this industry. And echo again what Steve has said, and hope that it applies equally to all. So again, speaking in favor of this ordinance. So thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Bring it back to council. Have any comments? Public hearing wise? Jennifer?
Oh, I sorry, I lied. Actually, on the fee topic, because we didn't hear anything on fees.
Yes.
So just a while ago, let's see when the email was. It was in January, I think Perry had kind of pulled together just a list of just several towns kind of all throughout Maine. I know you had sent a few local ones, and just kind of perusing those compared to other towns. I'm going to suggest for the fees for this, it seems like if we were to do $1,500 for a new license and $750 for a renewal, it seems like that would be very much in line with the rest of the state.
Okay. I guess if we could just verify that that will compensate for South Berwick all of the costs associated with it. But it's very wise, and we're following our town lawyer's legal advice to be very fair and consistent with our licensing fees.
Yeah. Do you, Jennifer and Barbara, do you guys have any concerns with those fees, or? I didn't.
That's it. We'll close the public hearing at 6:44. Board of Assessors. Convene the Southbury Board of Assessors meeting at 6:44. Seems like the item of business we have tonight is a abatement. 2022-1 for 22 Bittersweet Lane, map 011-109, account number 3390. It's for the tax year, April 1st, 2021. Circumstances are this: new veteran homestead exemption applications were received and approved, but not yet applied to the fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022 tax bills. This abatement corrects the omission. The abated assessed value represents $6,000 veteran exemption plus $25,000 homestead exemption. The recommendation is to grant the abatement. So the value abated would be $62,000 and tax abated would be $1,024.24. A motion would be appropriate.
Mr. Chair, I move we grant the abatement in the amount of the abated tax of $1,024.24.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the proposed abatement?
Was this just sort of like a one-off like error that they weren't applying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
And because we have the new assessor, Verna
Yeah.
Sharp,
yeah,
you know, when we're waiting on her test results, she took her test a month ago.
okay.
So I was gonna present to ask you if you wanted to give her the rights as you did with Craig in the past. But whereas she doesn't, we don't know what that grade is yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Next meeting, that's it.
Okay.
Right, hopefully, she's excited.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the assessors? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of granting the abatement in the amount of $1,024.24 for 22 Bittersweet Lane, map 011-109. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If none opposed, that motion passes 4-0. With that, we'll conclude the Board of Assessors. Okay. We have all four councils present tonight and town clerk, assistant town clerk, and manager. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August 24th, 2021.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the town council minutes of August 24th, 2021 as written.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes of August 24th, 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is not opposed, that motion passes 4-0. Town council of August 31st, 2021. I believe that we need to correct that the interim town manager was not in attendance.
Oh, yeah.
We'll strike that last sentence.
I get for pre-formatting.
It's always good to have a correction once in a while.
I'm glad to know somebody's reading them.
Did we have a motion yet?
Nope,
Motion to sign, to adopt the minutes from our August 31st, 2021 executive session as written.
be special
That's
meeting.
correct.
Special meeting.
Special meeting. As amended.
As amended.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there's none opposed. That motion passes 4-0. Signing the treasurer's warrant. We have a warrant before us this evening of $1,030,492.56 dated 9/09/2021.
Mr. Chairman, motion to sign the treasurer's warrant as you just stated.
Second.
Any discussion on the warrant? Hearing none. All those in favor of signing the warrant, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion passes 4-0. Public comment. Are there any members of the public here or on Zoom that wish to speak on any item that's not on the agenda? Yes, sir. Just please identify yourself.
I'm Larry Grondin. I live in Lebanon, Maine, but I was a resident of South Berwick. I'm representing the South Berwick Free Baptist Church in town. So I asked Barbara probably about a year ago, or maybe whatever it was anyway, about some information about the church clock, who owned the clock. And she gave me some information, but it wasn't complete. And it was dated 2004. So right now the clock is in need of some repairs. It's going to cost about $5,000. And then we spend $20 a week winding it. Well, we do spend $20 a week winding it. So some months it's $80 and some months it's $100. So a couple people on our board said, well, why don't we just remove it? But we still had the question mark of who owned it, because at that time we didn't have the proper paperwork. So I asked the manager, I brought her what Barbara had given me. And I said, can you see who owns the clock? So in the meantime, she said she could put it on tonight's meeting. In the meantime, somebody produced this strong box that we have and had to drill it open to get it open. And I have a letter from John responding to the letter that Barbara had given me.
Responding from who?
The letter that Barbara had given to me from John St. Pierre to
John
the
St.
church,
Pierre, okay.
Yeah. saying, in answer to your letter, this is 2004 now, but apparently in 1991, you had voted, or the town council had voted to, it says, consideration of a motion, well, everybody's got it in front of them,
Yes.
to convey the clock to the church, but with stipulations. And I have an idea. I think the clock was working then. We had done a bunch of work to it, but in my mind, if I was on the board then, I would have said, wait a minute, either we own the clock or we don't own the clock. If there's gonna be stipulations for forever, keep it going, come and get it. But of course, I wasn't on the board then. So what we would like to do is, right now, we have, according to this, no option to, we have to repair it. And, we're looking at $5,000 to repair it right now. And then that gets it in working order again, but down the road, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna go that route, but we would like the opportunity to be able to say, look, enough is enough. We're gonna block it up or do whatever, take it out. And it seems like a reasonable request, but.
Can I ask a question? So
Yes.
the issue is that the clock is the property of the church,
Yeah,
And then
according to
everything-
this now, what was
Yeah.
conveyed in 1991.
but then the stipulation was put in there that the clock can never be sold and it must be kept in working order and is the church not wanting to keep it in working order any
Well,
longer?
some people have said, we don't, enough is enough. We're spending $100
Yeah.
a month approximately to wind it.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna spend $5,000 to
Fix it.
fix it. When's the next time it's gonna break down?
Okay.
We don't have unlimited resources. We're just a small church.
So based on past motions that none of us were present for, are looking for us to okay the disabling of the clock? Is that?
Well, what we're saying is, however you can undo this and say, yep, the clock is yours.
Do with it what you like.
Right, yeah. If you wanna take it out and burn it, go ahead. If you wanna keep it there and fix it, that's fine too, but And I think we're gonna go in that direction, fixing it, but we do have some members that are saying, wait a minute, enough is enough, you know, we can't keep. Because we have other stuff that needs to be done in the church.
It would seem as though, just to put a bow on this and tie it, that if the church could write the town a letter to the manager's office
Okay.
and saying that it's not feasible to comply with the conditions of the 1991
Mhm.
grant. And we're relinquishing control of the clock. And so that brings us up to date where it basically comes back and becomes part of the town. And at that point in time, this board could act to say, we're going to abandon it in place. And for the church, to do it what it will in your own building and your own
Okay.
steeple. That makes sense?
I think so, yeah, I mean, and then we probably will fix it this time around, but,
That leaves
As
it
I recall, there was.
entirely up to you.
Yeah, there was something when it was repaired, because it laid not working for many years.
yeah.
And then-
sure, yeah.
When it was repaired, there was a question as to whether or not it was gonna chime. And because the neighbors hadn't heard it chiming in a long time, can we repair it but not have the?
Well, I think that was the bell, but we took the bell out because
Okay.
the tower was repaired
Okay,
and we couldn't put the bell back in because of structural,
okay,
it was too heavy, causing structural
So-
issues, so,
yeah, forget about that then.
yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to go. That way
Okay.
there, it honors the grant that was given back in 91, reverts back to us and we'll revert it back to you.
Okay, that sounds logical, because I think what happened is, this was in 91, I don't think we were ever, and for whatever reason, probably never notified that, and so 2004 is when we got notified that it, yes, it is ours, but with the stipulations, because this was taken up as old business. So it probably just got, somehow or other forgotten about.
Yeah.
And then probably the people on the board at that time said, well, it is what it is. The town's giving it to us, we're gonna have to do whatever, and there's no way to change it, and so. Okay, so I'll make that happen. And when's the next council meeting?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. Can we put that on the agenda for them?
Yes.
Okay, great, I appreciate it.
Yes, just send the letter off to
Yep,
Jennifer and.
okay,
we'll deal with it.
yep, okay, thanks.
I'm
I love
making
that.
the suggestion.
You know, I think
That's
that's great.
excellent,
I'm good.
very
Okay.
respectful.
Anybody else that wishes to speak or any item that's not on the agenda? Steve,
Steve Bays, 160 Ogunka Road. I didn't know if you could comment to the public about the status of the manager search. I know you had a powwow 2 weeks ago, whether you can say anything about how that's progressing.
yeah, we've had candidates respond to the search. We're paring down those candidates now to a first cut, so to speak. And we're preparing for interviews. Anybody else? Yes.
Foley, I'm actually here speaking on behalf of the Home for the Holidays Committee for the Silver Central.
Well, then you have to identify yourself with the record.
Diane Vasapoli, Committee Leader of Home for the Holidays for 2021. Glad to say that it's coming back this year. COVID edition. We'll work out all those details later. But speaking of details, we are requesting to place a 10 to 15-foot tree on the front lawn of Town Hall. Also to have access to the electricity and serve as an anchor for our events. We have the holiday, like volunteer and everything, we would provide everything. It will be from December 1st to January 9th, about 40 days, just to kind of like have it there lit. Just so it's not like, hey, one day and then it's gone.
Yeah.
safety wise, we've already thought about all that. Jeff Manahan said that he would, who's also on my board, said that he would gladly, make a box. Is that right, Jeff? You said you would make a box. That was good. Thank you. I can see ya. And we'll get some like guy wires and, just make sure it's like safe and no hazards. The other thing is we're gonna use LED lighting, keep it cost efficient. And if needed, we, will generate funds to go towards electricity costs.
So, let me ask a question.
Like this, I have a copy for you.
This is a live tree.
Yeah.
But it's temporary.
Yes,
Okay, so it's gonna be basically a box tree, a box root ball. And then the 15 feet, and it's going to be placed on where,
anywhere you would allow us that we have access to electricity, town hall center, front one, if we can. You don't want to go too crazy. Are you gonna string lights for us?
Yeah, I got a 17 in my house, so I'll spring wires for you.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
But go ahead, I got staging, we do a 17-foot.
Jack, you heard that, right?
100%, I'll come hang on.
Jessica, you said, Jesse, you heard that too, right?
when to respond.
Well, now that I have two of my committees over here, when do you think would be appropriate for that? Just so I'm not giving an answer by myself. How's the tree status, Jeff?
I've been reaching out to local people already but I haven't really tied anything down. So maybe probably by the next town council meeting, I could probably have a plan on where we were getting the tree from and the actual size of it. If that's adequate.
If
So
not,
that's
our
gonna
event
be-
is, well, if not, we are just requesting that it be put up for December 1st, but we would
Yeah.
need a little bit more time to figure out other details before then.
Let's go to the first meeting of October. That's the next meeting?
No,
No, the 28th is,
yeah,
and we're gonna go probably to around the 14th. Let's do it on the first meeting without objection. In October. That'll be plenty of time.
Yeah,
Yeah, October
absolutely.
12th.
Yeah.
October 12th?
And a holiday.
for us to decide on this?
Yeah, because there's, someone has to scope out where it's gonna go, what's appropriate.
Okay.
So it's not in the way of the Vietnam Memorial. I mean, there's other,
That's exactly what
other
we
issues that need to
came
be
here first.
decided that, I don't think there's anybody who's fundamentally opposed, but we have to make sure we do it right.
That's exactly why we started here before going further with our details on that. We wanted your permission.
So we'll put it on the agenda for October 12th. In the meantime, we can touch all the bases to select a spot.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a thing cool.
Okay,
Thank
anyone
you,
else?
Don't mind me, Macy's Labor Day, so,
Too late.
yeah, pay no attention to anything going on over here.
Yeah. Okay, town manager's report.
Yes, the new highway building is going up good. All the walls and trusses are up and the metal was ordered last week. It should be arriving next week. And you guys all have pictures, but for everyone here today, that's where we're at as of this morning. So guys are working hard at that. CMP billings for the actual streetlights has finally plateaued off after all this time. We had gotten a huge credit because it took a while for CMP to get through everything. So we had a huge credit sitting there and now we're finally being billed just over $300 a month for all the traffic lights. So instead of $40,000, it's we're
Wonderful.
in line for our $5,000 a year budget for all the streetlights.
That's great.
Yeah, that was good to see. We are going to be starting interviews next week for the new library director. We have a couple of good applicants we're excited about. And I know there's been some talk about the traffic lights on 236 and 91. The last reports I've received from MDOT is that we are on the fiscal 21-22 plan for the 91-236 light. I have reached out to them to get more of a deadline, if it's gonna be early, late spring, late fall. And I will give everybody an update as soon as I do receive that. And now that the school is back up and running full force and all the sports are running full force, it's now time to do a traffic study over there. If
Okay.
we would have done it anytime sooner, the traffic wouldn't have been there to get the light that everybody wants. So it will put it in their hands. No more. And that's all I have for today.
Is Karen participating in the interviews?
Yes,
Okay, cool,
and friends of the library, and she's got quite a group, so.
awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to unfinished business. Number one is the COVID policy.
Yes, and we did have the one question last time as to when short-term disability would kick in, if it was at the 7 or the 10 days, and it kicks in after 7 days. So I did make one reduction, instead of having the balance being able to go -7 days, I changed it to 5 days, because there's a weekend in there, so most people don't work more than 5 days a week. Therefore, it would cover them anytime if there was a COVID sickness before their short-term disability would kick in. And then everything else is fairly generic, but following all of the state and federal CDC guidelines. So as they change, we will change with them, and we don't have to change every single little verbiage every time something changes.
Okay. We have to take action on this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's technically an amendment to the personnel policy.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve the town of South Berwick COVID-19 workplace policy. Is there a date on this?
We can date it today.
Okay, as
September 14th.
as September 14th, 2021.
Preference supporting dogs.
Reference of the supporting dogs.
Yeah.
Of-
As
Yes.
presented.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're under the wire on that one. Okay, thank you for continuing to work on this.
Of course.
Are there any comments or discussion on the COVID-19 workplace policy?
How have things been with the uptick? How's the staff been?
We have one staff member that's a little bit concerned, so she started wearing a mask. But like Natalia has hers on today, we highly recommend it, but at this point, it's not mandatory. I know there's talk out there in the news and whatnot about it becoming indoor mandatory possible again. Obviously, if there was a mandate, we would abide by that as soon as possible, that day. And so right now it's at people's discretion.
Anything else? All those in favor of the COVID-19 workplace policy as presented this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. There's no abstentions or objections. It passes. Okay. Item number 2, unfinished business, possible action on zoning ordinance, medical marijuana caregiver retail storefronts. Were there any members of the public who wish to comment on that? Okay. So, the draft that we have in front of us includes the 3,000 for new and 1,500 for renewal, non-refundable application fees. That would be under N2. We want to change that to 1,500 for new and $750 for renewal, non-refundable application fees.
Yep, I'll take care of that. And then adding in 30 days for the surveillance.
Yeah, we'd have to see, That was on the E, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was E. That's the different
E
subparagraph.
four A one.
So we'd have to add, I think probably the easiest thing to do would be to
Maintained for 30 days or held for 30 days.
After exterior of the premises. Add and retained for 30 days, comma, to discourage and facilitate.
Yes,
and retain for 30 days after Christmas. Yeah, it works. One thing I was thinking about as I reviewed this again, as to we've appended now through a note following, well, it's on this document. It's noted B1, it's allowed in the B1 caregiver overlay district appended. So is this going to be appended to the land use table? Or where would we insert the map with the overlay district shown?
I put it on the end
Yeah,
on page
great.
8.
So this will be then part of the probably. Does that need a,
Probably should put better heading.
does that need any kind of a heading or some sort of a paragraph deal? Like, would it be O?
Figure.
Yeah.
It's a picture.
I thought we were gonna put another asterisk up in the table itself. I thought, do I recall you saying that, Mallory?
Yeah, they did. So we have caregiver retail stores, star.
With the
and then a
note.
note below says as allowed in the B1 caregiver overlay district, which is appended. It might be worth just like,
Oh, okay, I get it. The asterisk is on the description, caregiver retail stores in table A. Got it. Okay, I just wasn't seeing, I was looking under, I thought it was like major site plan, MSP, but it's there. Okay. Oh, it'd be appropriate to put the footnote below table A as it occurs in the book.
that's what I think we're suggesting.
yes.
So
The
the
asterisk.
asterisk says there's already caregiver retail stores as a row, and then we're suggesting sticking a note underneath the table. This
Let
note.
me just get that. Put away,
The note's already there.
So it's, I just want to see those other footnotes. That's the only thing I'm double checking.
Okay.
Okay. So caregiver retail stores. So that would get an asterisk, so it would seem like it would be more appropriate to footnote it on the page where the description occurs, rather than at the bottom of the table. Because, oh, wait a minute, we have other indexes down here. Because we have another one with an asterisk, it's a Y with an asterisk, permitted with special use permit obtained from the code enforcement officer. So,
What is your concern, Jack? You're concerned that the asterisks that we have after caregiver retail store and then the note, and that's subsequently like referring to the appended overlay map you just want to make sure that that is seen everywhere, that it's very clear what that map is, or,
Well, the way it works right now, we're gonna have an asterisk after the description.
Yeah.
Caregiver retail stores. That's how it occurs in the table. But there are other uses that also use a single asterisk.
Do I use two asterisks instead for this one?
Well, I'm
Either
thinking,
that or like the existing table is a series of numbers. So like somewhere it's like parentheses, one also requires subdivision review, da, 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 da. Like we could just make this, there's 1 through 8 of those sort of like footnotes already listed somewhere in the table.
And if I
Um,
may, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I can simply, when I submit it for codification, tell them to put it as appropriately numbered.
mhm.
because
Because they check all that editing and make sure they're not numbering something the same number as something else and.
to be consistent, I think the double asterisk would work because they refer to that description in the key that follows land use table. So it would be
The key though is universal for the entire table. It's applicable to the entire table, whereas the upper section where it's numbers 1 through 8 are like for specific uses. So for example, restaurant for R1, R1A and R2 and R2A, it says MSP parentheses 2, which means specifically for restaurants within the R1 and R2 districts, they must have frontage on Route 236 or 234. So this is like super specific what we're adding here. So I think we should put caregiver retail stores and in where, sorry, I'm losing track of the table, in the table where we actually say yes for B1, B2, whatever, we put the parentheses 9. And then in the lower section 9, we'll say, I guess I'll find my other, the working version. I have. The note 9 will say as allowed within the B1 caregiver overlay district, which is appended. Da, 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 da. That's what I suggest. And I think Barbara's suggestion is saying,
so.
stick it.
I'm
without
just
the number
looking
that
at,
makes no
I'm
sense.
looking at sludge spreading, that's note number 4 in parentheses.
Yeah.
This be the same kind of deal, and
Yeah.
so instead of an asterisk, then it goes to parentheses 9, close parentheses.
Yes,
That works for me.
Gets rid of single asterisks, quadruple asterisks.
yeah, that could explode real fast.
I just want to get it right. So the note becomes what we're going to describe as parentheses 9 then.
Yes.
Okay.
And so then to be, I would say to be consistent, I'm sure that the codification folks will suggest this. We should have it say caregiver retail stores and then in B1, it should say MSP parentheses 9. Do we, sorry, I can't remember. Can we take action on this now or do we have to wait till next meeting?
Oh, we can take action on it tonight.
Mr. Chair, motion to adopt the amendments for medical marijuana caregiver retail stores, including changes to table A as well as changes to 140-9 definitions and specifically 140-67.1 performance standards for caregivers as including the changes we discussed this evening, including the 30-day retention period for security footage, changing the fees from $1,500 to $1,500 for new, $750 for renewal, and then also the footnote changes that we discussed with the 9.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? First time around on this, January 2020, I was opposed to the of this ordinance. I didn't feel as though the situation was the same in 2020 as it was in 2018. There was ample opportunity for people who needed medical marijuana. to get it locally at that point in 2020. So based on the lack of need, I voted against this, and but it's with us now. And I'm supporting the council and the planning board's decision to move ahead with these amendments this evening, so I will not be opposed to the amendments as included in the motion. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, that motion passes 4-0. Okay, unfinished business, number 3, medical marijuana caregiving licensing. Any members of the public wish to speak on this topic? Okay, we'll bring it back to council. What do we want to talk about with that, respect to that this evening?
I had sent today or last night, I think it was today, a very draft version of a planning board charge. And I entitled it Medical Marijuana Registered Caregiver Home Occupation Performance Standards. Do you have it, Jeff?
I printed out, I got Bill's request to attend the planning board meeting tomorrow to explain the issue on the request. Is it included in that?
No.
Okay, so this is just a forwarded thing from Amy to Bill. A message, and it also includes some correspondence from Phil Saucier.
That was a follow-up on some questions Abby had.
Oh, is that the email from 606? I didn't have time to read that.
Yeah.
If there was,
Very
maybe
bright.
yours of,
How did they got it?
Okay, I had sent it.
just to refresh, this was September 14th. That Phil sent it.
Is that- Yes, wait, no,
That was a
No,
reply
it's
to.
not on there.
No, but I had questions. It wasn't in there then. I sent this on,
she sent this morning at 8:30.
I just sent you the rest of the correspondence.
I have not seen it. I was out
so
in the field all day today.
basically, I wrote a charge, which what we've been discussing in terms of what problems do we have that have been clearly identified for months now by constituents, and how do we solve that? The thought was if we created a new caregiver home occupation, specifically charging the planning board to look at hours of operation, that is going to alleviate a lot of the constituent community concerns that we've had. I referenced, I can read it, it's very short. Given MRS Title 22, 24, 30-3, I'm sorry, -D3, caregivers sharing common areas, and thus the potential for larger scale marijuana business in all zones of town, the South Berwick Town Council formally requests the planning board draft performance standards for medical marijuana registered caregiver home occupation and present their recommendations to the town council. In light of much public comment, we ask that your research and recommendations at minimum specifically address the following. 1, hours of operation. 2, cap of marijuana cultivation square footage size. 3, odor mitigation, and 4, caregiver licensing. I drafted this before I received correspondence from our town attorney. And so Jen, after reading that email and drafting this, I'm trying to problem solve. We know that there's some issues.
Yep.
That email from Phil, well, Mallory and I were talking about this earlier. I know I'm going all over the place, but I think it would be very helpful for us to have some clarity. And I would like to do that in a public forum. Last time that we spoke with Phil, it was an executive session. It was very enlightening, but I would like to do that on camera to specifically get into this, because the email correspondence from today basically said that we cannot find out who the caregivers are. And so anything that we would do would be voluntary, is how I read it. So yes, we can create this, we can charge the planning board with creating performance standards and add a home occupation for a caregiver. But according to our lawyer, from my first, read of that was that they could license with us or not. And so there's no enforcement, there's no municipal reach. It's just a voluntary, and
I'm not sure I agree with you on that.
it's not, if you would agree with me, I'm kind of verbatim
It seems,
throwing
it
out what
seems like an
Phil is
uncertainty.
saying. It is a major uncertainty. So I would like to have the chance, with the sun shining, to have the planning board and the town council have a workshop with Phil
Okay,
where we can get some clarity, because what I read in that email said that it would be voluntary. And yes, we could create these performance standards and then people could comply if they wanted to. And
One
so,
thing he did say, Phil, the lawyer, is if we had a specific question on a specific person on a specific issue,
and that,
we could-
imagine that.
ask the state, and they could just say yes or no if this particular person is licensed for that. But that, you have to know exactly
And
what it is.
And so for, a point of public, I have asked that, the code enforcement officer is able to ask the Department of, the Office of Marijuana Policy. They're allowed to inquire on that licensing. And so I had asked earlier today, when I was very surprised by the town lawyer's, email, given the direction that we were going to problem solve for town, that it would be voluntary. And I had asked for the code enforcement officer to verify what is that status. If it's a caregiver, then that's one thing, but if it's something else, we need to find that out. So I specifically asked, and the answer was that he's out of the office.
Yeah,
Today?
Q4, he was already gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know when we could get an answer from, will the code enforcement officer contact the Office of Marijuana Policy and communicate that with the council of what that property is
I'm confused.
Yeah,
delegated?
what do you want him?
I want him to,
ask?
well, we know from a constituent, from Steve who's in the office, or I'm not in the office, I'm sorry, that in the room right now, there's a license number that he obtained in that email that he shared with us from OMP that listed that property on Agunquit as a caregiver retail store. So, we know that we have the recourse of our code enforcement officer to contact the Office of Marijuana Policy and ask, is that a caregiver or is that so that is the clarity that I want, at least from our code enforcement officer.
we are
Very
jumping around a little bit here.
Yeah, you have me completely baffled in what you want
Well,
to ask.
I don't want to do something redundant. The email from Phil has really muddied the waters. I saw this planning board charge as adding a home caregiver occupation as a problem-solving, moving forward thing. This seems very redundant in a lot of ways to tackle the problems that we've been very clearly hearing. So I would like to have some legal clarity. If I'm,
Let me just follow up if you're done. Are you done? I
okay,
don't want to interrupt, that's all.
so that's why I want to have the meeting with Phil. We got a lot of clarity when we met with him in executive session, but I think that clarity would be very helpful for the public as well to hear.
Is this about one address?
No.
So because we go down this road of, we don't know what we don't know. We can't get a list from the state on registered caregivers in their name in the town, right? That was made crystal clear in the email today, unless I read that wrong.
Well, Phil said that the code enforcement officer could inquire the Office of Medical Marijuana Policy and they could,
Yes, on a one-on-one basis.
and that's
he-
what I'm asking,
he-
requesting.
No, that's what I'm saying. Are you requesting that for this particular residence?
Yes,
Only this particular residence?
yes,
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of, because that's all he can get us,
yes.
is a one-on-one. Now I'm clear.
That's
I
what
think
want.
around
Go ahead.
the charge specifically, that Abby drafted, that she just read through. I think for that, I think that the suggestion of having a public session with our attorney to get some clarity around what is possible, I think is really necessary, because I agree with Abby. I feel like the communication that we got from him today was very clear in the sense that like we can't ask for a list of caregivers. So then how do we actually then proceed with this licensing process that's on the table if that's the case? But at the same time, we've heard from Phil on numerous occasions that we can regulate and license caregivers. So how do we do that? And so I
We
think,
know who they are.
well, I think we need to have a
Right.
conversation, a public conversation with Phil to understand, okay, we're hearing this and we're hearing this, and how do we put those two together and make this happen?
Yes.
Because it does not seem clear at all, to me at least, of how we can do that.
And I want to put this to bed.
Yeah.
I really do. I want to clear this up and move on with other town business.
So the charge, they're gonna kick back to us on one thing.
On
They're
the
gonna- on the
caregiver
license.
licensing.
Right, they don't do
Yeah, well,
licensing,
no,
so.
I just,
We're not ready to get this. to the-
No, I understand that. I just want to make sure when we get there, we can strike that before it even goes.
yeah,
because they're
no,
gonna throw it back at
I
us.
was thinking, oh, their purview, and I knew that, but I, yeah.
Oh, good.
it's a draft.
Now, I'm looking at Phil Saucer's letter today at 10:44. And there's the first paragraph that talks about voluntary things.
Mhm.
But the last paragraph is completely crystal to me, where it says, performance standards adopted pursuant to a zoning land use ordinance typically are applied when an application is being reviewed by the CEO or planning board. While the town could also require certain standards be met as part of the licensing ordinance that the board would ensure are being met in reviewing the application. So echoing Mallory's comment, there's really not a lack of clarity here with respect to what the town can do, because we can, I think it's crystal also that we can regulate caregivers. We can regulate caregivers and we can regulate registered caregivers. So it's a question of how we go about doing that. I just wanted to, just for the sake of the public, so that I just want to say that we're really not confused about going ahead and creating some regulations. That's the goal. That's the prize. But we need to know what the path forward is to formulate that.
Well, the stick in the mud, which goes back to where Abby was, the stick in the mud is we can regulate, we know that, we've been told that, we can write the regulations. The only way we can enforce those regulations is if the caregivers, the registered caregivers, because they're all registered. In order to be a caregiver, you have to be registered, you have to have a license from the state. We know that. The only way we can do this is if those registered caregivers come to us and say, hey, I'm a registered caregiver, and I want you to license me also. If they choose not to, they are in violation of the town law or the town ordinance.
But we have.
But if
no-
we-
But well, we have no recourse to know
Yeah,
if they're, it depends on where they live. If they're not bothering their neighbors, we can't regulate it. That's the only gray area we have, Jack.
We can regulate them. It's a question, and I think it's important for the town to push this forward. So that if someone is otherwise non-complying with a town land use ordinance, then the violation piece kicks in.
Like, agreed, 100%.
But it needs to be enabled first. So I think it's incumbent upon the town to push this forward, be proactive, because we've had the caregiver law foisted on us, without any input. And now we're struggling to see what's appropriate in terms of everything that Steve's been talking about for a couple of years now, where we have a retail-esque operation functioning in a residential zone.
We're all in agreement of that.
And so the vagueness seems to be is how far a registered caregiver can push the envelope in terms of advertising. These are other pieces of it, advertising, the hours of operation, noise, parking, all the other performance standards, any other business we have to comply to. And then it's up to us to decide what's appropriate for the residential zone. And so that's what I'd like to push forward.
so then, do you want to move this draft onto the plane?
I don't think we're ready for that. I think we can inform them that we're working towards that, but I don't think that we're we're coalesced into a formal charge for the planning board this time.
Can we schedule a workshop then with Phil?
Sure, no
So,
problem.
and we'll have it on camera so everyone can hear all the questions that are being asked. We schedule that.
Well, I guess it all depends on schedules.
As I say, don't look
I
at
was just
that.
gonna say the 21st, but we're doing
Don't
interviews
look
then.
at that calendar, because
It's
we're
all
booked,
availability.
we're booked into October with getting a town manager, so it's gonna have to be middle
October.
to end of October.
Okay,
We're-
maybe the
we're-
13th.
Our hands
Is
are
that
tied
the-
with interviews.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be a little thing.
We're booked straight out for a little bit.
The 12th.
Better. First meeting.
But Jack, we do have it in our favor, because if you go to certain websites like we're discussing, his hours of business are right there. So if he did register with us, we can nail him on violating the town ordinance right off the bat right there. So you're right, if they out themselves, we're all good.
If, that's the big if the only registration there is caregiver.
Again,
Yeah, it's well,
caregiver, registered caregiver.
no, there isn't a difference.
Yeah, it's
There
all,
is a
they're all
difference.
registered with the state.
They're all
but
registered with state.
If you have a retail store, you're gonna also be a caregiver.
That's not,
No, but
That's
it's to be a caregiver in the state of Maine, you have to be registered,
Unless you're doing it for yourself.
unless you're doing it for yourself.
So I
If
just-
you're doing it for anybody but yourself, you have to be registered with the state.
well, a caregiver can also dispense to members of their immediate family without registration.
Correct.
Mhm.
But again,
That's a caregiver.
correct.
Yep.
But we're not looking at me and dispensing it to my wife or my child. We're looking at cars coming into
Yes.
driveways.
And I think that's where
12 hours,
where it
12
flops
hours out of
over
there.
into the registered caregiver.
Right,
I want to just emphasize that point, that we're trying to stay away from the mom and pop deal.
Yes.
no, we're just going
So speak-
after, looking at the registered caregiver that could
The
potentially
scope is
have
just
multiple
registered
clients, yes,
And blossom into,
yes.
the Southburg Riviera area. where-
But in our problem solving and trying to take care of these issues that have been presented and are still currently in existence, this charge only helps us if that license is for a caregiver only.
But you don't need this to get that. You don't need this to
But-
get the information you want.
If the
No,
license-
those are two separate things. There's a code enforcement officer talking to Office of Marijuana Policy to find out what the license, how that's classified. And then there's the charge to the planning board for adding the home occupation and giving us performance standards based on hours of operation, a cap of cultivation size, odor, and then whatever else they wanted to add on.
Or anything else that we want to add as a council.
Correct. So they're wanting two in tandem, I guess, potentially.
So, Jack, in your opinion, with this charge, what additional is needed in it in order for us to give it to the planning board?
I think we have to talk to Phil.
Okay.
That seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, I guess I was sort of thinking like we could give the planning board this as like a starting place, and then the conversation with Phil, I feel like is really to benefit all of us, the planning board as well. So they would have the charge that we've sort of like come up with at this point prior to the conversation with Phil. So any questions that we have that have anything to do with this charge can be addressed there. Like, I feel like they should have a little bit, like, I think they should be involved, and I think that they should have some,
There's no
Great.
question about that. That I think it's completely appropriate that Amy has notified the chair of the planning board that this is coming along. And I'll give the chair a call and say this is coming along, but we're not ready to give a,
Okay.
you know. a
As long as
box
they're
of-
aware.
of- Right, but this is coming along and we're trying to approach it collegially, and not like it's coming down from on high, you shall do this.
Yep.
It's not our intent.
Mhm.
We want to work cooperatively as we've been working over the last couple of years to, wade through all these issues.
Did you want to pick a date to try and have Phil come in and?
I think we should be at his disposal, to tell you the truth, whatever he can do for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
But in October,
I would say the first couple weeks of October,
Yeah.
whenever he's available.
Yeah, and,
Jack likes Tuesday, so if there's a fifth, or if we combined it with our meeting on the 12th.
Or we could potentially combine with the planning board meeting too. I don't remember, but
Those are
their
Wednesdays.
cadence is off of ours, right?
I most likely won't be here on the 12th, but you can have it without me. Yeah, north. I'm going bird hunting for the week. So I don't want to beat this any more than we've already beaten it, but I think the answer to your question is about Joe, or about the code enforcement officer, is in the letter of the
Yeah.
email that we received from Space. It states that
With the store.
he went through and he was found to be in compliance with program rules and statutes as a result of the inspection. Mr. Bergdahl does operate a retail medical marijuana store at the office. It's right,
Yes.
it's, so they went and inspected him. That's OPM.
I saw that with the last line redacted, which I would have liked to have seen.
I'm sure he'd send it to us for not public dissemination, right? I'm sure that's not an issue. But if that is exactly, and I'm sure it is, what we were told it is, the information's right there. He's operating legally by the state of Maine,
The store,
a store.
but, and as a use that is not legally allowed in that zone.
Correct.
But what was stated in this chamber a few times, so I could go back and find it on the different meetings, or maybe others that are listening are better apt with, what's been said specifically on this topic, was we took the sign down. It's not a storefront. I heard that.
He took the sign down because he wasn't he did not have a permit to put the sign up.
But I heard it's not a storefront. We took the sign. You can't have a sign unless you're a storefront. So those two were intrinsically linked, which furthered my thinking that this was a caregiver. And furthered my thinking of the impetus of giving this charge to the planning board to solve that problem that could spread throughout town potentially. So it's a part, I think, of miscommunication. I am very glad that we're moving on, and the town manager search is going so well. We had a wonderful list of candidates who've applied. We're gonna problem solve through this process of hiring a new town manager. We know that there have been some hiccups and communication in particular, and in the hiring process.
What's this have to do with the marijuana question?
Well, I just said that it's been stated in this chamber that we took the sign down because it's not a
What about- Why
storefront.
are you going into what we're doing with hiring a town manager?
I think they have a lot to do with one another, Jack. I mean, whoever is in charge is gonna set the tone for the entire town. Our only job is to oversee one person. And we're hiring a new person, well aware of the issues that we have in town. I think of communication, involvement, enforcement, and we're looking at that during this hiring process to solve those problems that we already know are there. So the last round of interviews, a lot of the questions that we asked the candidates had to do with solving South Berwick, what's happening in South Berwick right now. So I feel very confident with the candidates that we have and confident with our work with MMA that we're moving in the right direction to fix these issues. Because if we as a council have confusion about some of these things, I can't imagine the frustrations that the public must be feeling.
And I'm just gonna go on this. I've been talking marijuana since damn near I started on this council 7 years ago. I can't tell you what's been said and not said in this room. And you can go back on every meeting you want to go on. Someone possibly could have said that. I don't know, but the facts are the facts. Joe, our code enforcement officer, had the sign taken down because he did not get a permit to put up a sign. A letter dated from Kurt Bossy on April 28th states the gentleman's running a medical marijuana retail store from his address by all program rules and statutes of the state. So if you look at that, he's out of compliance with our ordinance in my view. So yes, Joe can enforce that?
Yeah.
Based on the ordinance?
It's up to him to interpret the ordinance.
Correct. But it's black and white right there with that letter.
That's kind of, John, what I was thinking ahead of time of having the code enforcement requesting that the code enforcement officer officially get that information and share that with us, because that would be him in his capacity and title sharing with the legislative body. Is it A or is it B?
And the town manager can get that information
Yes.
for us. But I mean, I'm pretty clear on that.
Yeah.
Going back on everything else, we got the email, we know why the sign was taken down, we got that, we got this. I think we're clear on what we need an answer on. And that's enforcement.
Anything else? Cool, yeah, Jennifer. Thank you.
Our shoulders, you got this.
Oh, and I'll correspond with Bill, planning board chair, to say that work in progress, more to come, and we're looking to put together a meeting, a workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, just one last one. Being the email, sorry, that I just got. Bill's requesting someone to join the planning board meeting tomorrow to explain this.
I'm gonna give him a call.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
During the day, and explain it to him. If that's not enough,
I can join the meeting.
I can join the meeting as well.
tune in and you know, whatever we need to do, it's more, it's to be continued. Okay, thank you. Okay, new business, sign the warrant calling for the November municipal election. Look for the warrant. Oh, one other thing occurs to me, jumping back, the moratorium for the medical marijuana caregiver store expires on October 10th. So due to that, it would seem to be appropriate to enact an emergency preamble to have that take effect immediately.
Mhm.
So otherwise we have to wait 30 days. So that motion, I think, would be in order.
Mr. Chair, motion to enact an emergency preamble for the medical marijuana caregiver retail store ordinance amendments.
Second.
Yeah, just include time is
Enacted.
time is of the essence due to the
Time is of the essence due to the fact that the current moratorium ends on October 10th.
No. You good with that, Barbara?
Yep.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, none opposed, that motion passes 4-0. Here we have a warrant in front of us.
Chair, I move we adopt the warrant for the town of South Berwick municipal election warrant for the date of November 2nd, 2021. The hours of 8 AM to 8 PM.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Are we gonna have a ballot box available?
Yes.
Do you know when absentee ballots are gonna be available?
A month.
A month from now?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of signing the warrant, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There's none opposed, that motion passes 4-0. Is that in front of us?
The warrant.
warrant itself.
Got it.
You got black ink.
Oh,
John, you and I are gonna have to trade. That breeze is getting a little cool.
I will do everything I can to get us out of here momentarily. But we can trade. I would love
What
to
if we
sit
put
by.
the blinds down? Would that help with the wind, Barbara?
Are they really simple?
I can put my
John,
sweater
do you
on.
have that quarter handy?
We're saving money tonight and we're breathing fresh air.
Okay, we have a suggested public hearing date to update our GA ordinance.
Chair, I move we update our GA ordinance or set a date to update our GA ordinance on Tuesday, October 12th at 6:30 PM.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, that motion passes. 10-12. Okay, solar farm moratorium, set a hearing date, suggested date is September 28th.
Mr. Chair, I move to set a public hearing on the solar farm moratorium on, I'm sorry. what was that? September 28th
At 6:30.
at 6:30. Do you want to second it too?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, there's none opposed. That motion passes. 4-0. Any comments, John?
I have none.
None.
I did take the opportunity to go out to the town forest and it was great. I realized that the time had gone by since I last cut. Did a timber harvest out there probably I don't know, 8 months ago. And now the leaves that were cut in the woods are now allowed sunlight to reach the forest floor. So now we have these saplings that are, 8, 10, 12 feet tall. It's really it's nice to see the progress over time. So it was a nice walk.
How was the text?
None.
Wow, good. The last time I was down there, crazy.
Yeah.
Good.
And I had like pants on and it was, I didn't see any. Abby,
We received some email with some accolades to the transfer station employees. So, and I have personally been going to the transfer station more than I have in years recently, with a little bit of reluctance. I was scared to go to the mixed plastics. People were so nice. And I've heard that from others in the community, but to get to experience that personally, the customer service is just excellent. It's nice music too, but wonderful job. So please pass that on. And this weekend was the Pumpkin Man event, and I attended that. And on Sunday, it was so well attended. I met people. It's really like ecotourism. I met people from all over the country. There's this woman from Texas that came just to do the Pumpkin Man in South Berwick, which was really neat. And the amount of volunteers that Rachel Martin, the organizer, uses, how it's involved with the school, it's just such a wonderful event, and it really does put South Berwick on the map. So I just wanted to congratulate, Rachel Martin on this wonderful event that she puts on every year. It was really well done. And that's it.
I just noticed John St. Pierre is raising his hand and off mute. I don't know if he had a comment. John, here, did you have a comment?
Thank you. I didn't speak under public comment because I thought I'd have an opportunity under the agenda item of solar farm moratorium, but I wasn't given that opportunity, but I do have a comment on it.
proceed.
So in reading through the ordinance, I guess I'm somewhat confused on the applicability in terms of being retroactive. Chris Otness is also listening in, and Chris and I have an approved site plan for a solar farm, and construction is imminent. Building permit is going to be applied for this week. Voluminous effort has gone into this in good faith, thinking that we had a approved site plan, and the language of this ordinance, that's not at all clear. In fact, it's quite clear that we basically wouldn't have approval to proceed. I did try to reach Jack today to discuss this, but was unable to by phone. Only learned of this today. So to me, this is a bad faith ordinance at best. You know, people proceed with things based on approvals. That's the rules. And, you know, for the town to kind of take a whole different approach to that, a very, very long standing state law with regard to applicability of ordinances, and kind of throw that to the wind seems rather irresponsible. So that's my comment. I'd like to think that that's not the intent of this ordinance, but it certainly is what it says if you read it. Going back and looking at the last council meeting, John clearly asked that question, and it was answered that no, it won't apply to projects that are already approved. But that's not what it says. So, you know, we can only go by what it says and what we're reading. So I would certainly hope that the council takes a look at that and thinks through that again. Thank you.
Can
One second, please. John, this is Jack speaking. You have a planning board permit, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the ordinance is not in effect for solar farms at this point in time. There is no solar farms ordinance. It's been, your application, I believe, is reviewed under public utilities or something like that, some other area of the land use table. And so the moratorium cannot be enacted until at least we've had a public hearing on it. So as far as I'm not the one to comment on this, but it's my opinion that you can go about your business however you see fit.
That was why I reached out to the planning board to make sure that everybody who had anything going had all their paperwork in, because we did not want to stop anything that was in progress.
Which again leads to my asking that question, John. I did not want to stop anybody that had planning board approval and was in the process. That was not the intent.
Exactly.
I understand that, John, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the comments back. However, that's not what the ordinance says. If you really sit down and look at it, that's not what it says. I've got it in front of me right now, and I don't think any of you need me to read it to you, but it even goes so far as to saying an occupancy permit cannot be issued once this ordinance goes into effect. So even if we were under construction, which we're imminent, but even if we were under construction, you know, Chris could spend $5 million out there building a solar farm and then not be able to turn the switch on under this ordinance. So I appreciate the sentiment, but it's not what the words say.
Well, John, number one, it's not an ordinance. It's not an
But
ordinance.
it's going to be, Jack. You just sent a public hearing for it, you know, tonight. In 2 weeks, you're gonna have a public hearing.
To make comments during the public hearing, and then as appropriate, your argument at this point seems to be compelling. We can make adjustments to what the text of the moratorium says.
Because the intent was not to make this retroactive. comfortable,
Thank you for your comments.
verified it. John?
Okay,
Oh, no, I did,
No.
we'll address it. Oh,
Absolutely.
we good? No, I just wanted to-
John, you still have your hand up?
No,
Or take
I
it
was
down?
prompting.
Yeah.
And
No, I saw it's hand was up. Okay, so I guess it'd be appropriate to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'll probably get that chair.